Hello everyone. So in this video we are going to continue what we started in the last video, which is characters, and now we will upgrade what we was doing, which is characters at just one letter, and now we will use more than one letter. So this is what we call strings. So dealing with the strings, you'll find it somehow similar to characters. So first of all, strings in C are just an array of characters. So in this case, you are having just like, instead of having one character, okay, you are having just array of characters, which means that, for example, this is an array. I have character 1 here, character 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So just having an array of characters. So for example here, char, and as you can see, like I'm using the same type I used before, which is char, okay, my string, and then here just writing the number of elements in my array, okay, and then equals to a string. This means that you are having an array of 20 elements like this, and then in the first one I have A, the second one I have space, the third one I have S, T, R, I, N, G. Okay, so this is actually how in the memory, okay, this line will be read. So char, so I have characters, and then my string, and then between two square brackets 20. This means that I'm reserving in the memory not only 1 byte, but I will reserve 20 bytes. Okay, this is just the declaration is saying that char, so my type is char. I know that for each char I have 1 byte in the memory, and then my string, and then between two square brackets 20. This means that I will reserve 21 bytes, right? Which means that I reserve 20 bytes, okay? And then the initialization here is saying that, hey, I don't have 20 actually. I have A, and then space, and then S, T, R, I, N, G. So you are using 8 characters only, right? Because we are counting the space. So I didn't use the 20, so why I want to reserve all 20? This is why actually for the compiler to know or to make sure that I'm here at the end of the string, adding another character, which is /0 or \0, which means that, hey, now this is the end of my string. So inside the memory, every time I'm declaring and initializing a string, whatever the number I'm writing here, I'm going to stop at the last character and then put the null character, which is the /0. Okay, so why I'm doing that? In this case, you don't have to reserve the remaining bytes in the memory. Okay, because most of the time you're asking the user to enter, right? So the number you're writing here, this is your maximum expectation for the user. Like, let's say I'm asking the user to enter his name, right? So I can just write username, and then between the two brackets I will put, like, let's say 100. I'm putting the, like, somehow the maximum which will never occur for a user to have a name which is having 100 characters, right? But this doesn't mean that I'm going to reserve in the memory 100 bytes, right? I'm just like putting the range, and then the user will enter the name, and the compiler directly will terminate it with the null operator or the /0. Okay, so one thing actually to know, that while we are dealing with the strings, and since the strings are not actually a type or a standalone type, okay, because it's dependent on characters, in this case we have to use a new library which is called string.h. And in string.h actually we are having some defined functions which are helping us to deal with strings. Okay, so let's now see, like, if you are declaring a string, as you can see, we have double quotations here, right? if you remember for the characters, so character, my character equals to, if you remember this from the last video, we are using single quotation with characters. We are using double quotations with strings. Okay, so since we are calling it an array, so actually yes, we are having an array of characters which represents the string. But just make sure that in the memory, all these characters are stored in consecutive memory locations. What the meaning of that? Let's have an example. Let's say I'm having the string which is called Muhammad S, okay, which will be represented in this way, right? Declaring character and then my name and then 9, okay? And 9 here, if you count this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So why I'm writing 9? Because if you remember, we said that we have to have the null operator. Even if the compiler will add it by itself, but you have to make sure that you are including 1 plus the length of your string. Okay? So in this case, if we went to look at the memory, you will find the following. In the memory, you will have these memory locations are reserved, and each one is 1 byte, right? Okay, so MOHMA and so on, and the last one is reserved as /0. And if you look at the addresses, and we will look later at the addresses and how it is written, but let's say most of the addresses are written in hex, and if you remember, if I have 0x, this means that this is a hex number, and let's say this address is FF31, and then the next one will be FF32, and it must be actually having the same sequence, so just adding 1 when going to the next character, and so on. Okay, so in this case, like when you are declaring and initializing, you are just going to the memory, starting with the first character, and then put all other characters afterwards. Okay, so as you can see here, if I have char string 20 initial value, so everything will be there until 13. And then after 13, nothing is there in the memory. Whatever, the memory itself is having something else, but my string will just reserve until 13. It's not using the whole 20, right? And exactly we are using here 14 because we are starting counting from 0. So I used 14 and not 20, okay? And always put in your mind that the null character is just put in there because I know that every time the compiler is looking at this, will know that this is the end of my string. Okay, so every time you are dealing with the strings, don't forget to use include string.h, which is the header having most of the functions dealing with strings. Okay, so for example, if you are scanning a string, so in this case you are using %s, which is s for string, right? And one important thing here, there is no AND operator here. Very important. Remember, when you was scanning ends, floats, doubles, even characters, there was an AND operator. The only one which we are not putting an AND operator is strings. And remember, this is very confusing, okay? And if you are asking me why we are not using the AND operator here, I will tell you, can I just wait and answer this when we go to pointers and work with pointers and see how it is working and all of that stuff? At this point, I will answer this, okay? But a quick answer, actually, I will say that this is already the address. If you remember, we're using the AND in front of the variable to point to the address of the variable, right? But here, this is actually already the address, okay? This is why we are not putting there the AND operator. Okay. And then just make sure that every time you are entering a string, let's say I'm using scanf, and then as a user I will enter the following: Mohammed, and then space, and then Salim. I don't know how to write my name. Okay, Salim. So in this case, actually, as you can see, this is what I wrote on the keyboard. But if you went to the memory and see what is there, you will find only Muhammad. Why? Because the scanf is ignoring everything when it just see a space, okay? So it's better if you are dealing with a first name and last name to have a scanf for each one of them. And again, when we advance over the semester, we'll find how to solve this or how to use another function which will take whatever you write with a space or let's say multiple lines, okay? Okay, so some advices here. Note that string is not a type in C. Again, what are the types in C? Int is a type, float, double, character, all of these are types, but string is not a type. You can see strings as extension of the character type, which is instead of having only one character, we are having an array of characters, okay? So this is an example, if you can see here. And one thing actually that you can't do is, if you are declaring your string, so I have here char and string, let's say it is my name, and I have here, let's say 20. Okay? If you didn't initialize while you are declaring, you will not be able to do the following. My name equals to, this is not right. So you have only two options, either to declare and initialize at the same time or to use a function called string copy. And in this case, I will write the following: string copy my name, oops, and Mohammed. So this will do what I want to do here. It will take Muhammad and it will just put it in the variable which is called my name. Okay, and let's go with each other actually to see an example on Notepad++. And here, if you look to this example I have here, starting with include standard input output and include string.h. As we said, if we are dealing with strings, we have to do this. Here, this is an option that you can use, and we saw that in the application activity, that if you want to have a constant, you can just use hashtag define and then the constant name and then 6, for example here, or any number, or const int and then string len equals to 3. Okay, this is if you want to use something like that, but I'm not going to use it now. And then I have here two strings. The first string is my string and then 6 and then SE185. And if you count it here, you will find that SE185 is 5 characters. And then I'm adding another one because I know that there is a null character, so this is why I'm adding it. Okay, and then I have another string which is 20. And here I will just print SE185. And then I will ask the user to enter a new string for the same variable and then scanning it. And finally, I will just print this one, okay, which is the new one I scanned. And then I will use the string copy. As we said, this function is taking whatever here and assigning it to the variable, okay? And finally, print the another variable. So let's try to run this program. Let me just save it here and clear what we have here. Okay, and then gcc strings.c/o strings, and then strings just to run, and then here it printed SE185, and then please enter a new string, and let me just enter 185 SE. Okay, and in this case it printed that, and then as you can see here, string copy, it's working now, and then printed what we had from string copy. One thing I want to show you here is that if I put here 3, which is less than the length here plus 1, right? What will happen? Let's run this and see. Compile again. First of all, it's giving me a warning, okay? But make sure that the warning is not stopping your program, or it's not stopping the compilation process. So finally, you are having your execution file ready, and if you run the execution file, it will actually run. But now, look here. SE185 is printed as SE1, and then some garbage values from the memory. Why? Because actually here you put the length equals to 3, which is less than the length of your string. So I'm just putting that here to tell you, make sure that you are giving yourself enough space, okay? And again, if you wrote 100, this will not hurt. Why? Because the compiler by itself, it will terminate the 100 at the end of the string, right? So if you're writing 100, but your string is just 15, it will go until 16 and put the null character, okay? So make sure that you are putting the right length for your string. Okay, so we saw the example with each other now, and one thing actually that we can do, since the string is an array of characters, right? Then I can choose any character inside this string. What's the meaning of that? Let's say we want to check the first character, which is the first letter in your, let's say, first name, okay? So to do that, the only thing you need to do is follow the index. Because if you look here, you'll find that the first letter is having index 0, the second index 1, index 2, index 3. And remember that we are having here the null operator, okay? Or the null character. So in this case, if I want to access the m by itself, I just need to write Mary, which is the variable name, and between square brackets, I will just have 0. This means that I want to access the first element in this string array, okay? And since you can access this element, you can print it, or if you can see here, what I'm doing here actually, it's just changing. Since I know that Mary 0 will access this m, okay? I will just say Mary 0 equals to d. This means that please change this m and put the new value, which is d. And if you print that, again, if you print what you have in Mary using %s, in this case, you will find it Derry. So why this happened? Because you accessed the name and put there a new character, okay? So again, since strings are just characters, array of characters, then you can access any character inside this array, okay? Let's have an exercise on that. So we are asking here, write a program to ask the user to enter a password, then print to the screen the length of the password, okay? So to print to the screen the length of the password, you are going to use a new function, which is called string length, okay? So let us go here and let's save this and open a new one. And as usual, standard input output.h, And since we are dealing with strings, so we need to include string.h. Okay, if we need to include anything else, we will just put it there. So you'll have here void main. Again, you can put int main, whatever. And we want to ask the user to enter password, right? So the first thing, I will just have declaration, okay, for the variable, and I don't have to initialize because the user will already enter from the keyboard the value of user password. And then after that, I'm going to ask the user to enter the password. Okay, so the user will enter the password, and here, as usual, I'm asking the user, please enter password. And then scanf. As we said here, we are going to use %s, right? And then we will write user password. Do I have to have here an AND operator? No. Why? Again, as we said, this is just a special case for strings that we are not using the AND operator here. For all other types, we are using it. Okay. So now the user will enter the password, and then finally printf the length of the password is, since the length is always integer, I will use %d. Okay, and then how to measure the length? As we said, like we are using string.h, which is containing certain functions used with the strings. One of these functions is called string length, but here the function name is strlen. Okay, and then I will just write the name of my string, and that's it. So in this case, I will just print the length, just the length of the password. Okay, let's password length. Let's write it all. Okay, and then save it, and let's clear here. Oh yeah, clear. So GCC pass length. Let's see. Okay, we are having an error. Array size is missing. So we didn't write here the array size. I can just write 100 and then save. And going back here, some compilers actually are not giving error for this, and the compiler is understanding that the compiler will get everything by itself and put the null characters, but other compilers can just give an error for that. So let's run again, no errors, and then pass length. Please enter password. So let me enter some characters for the password, and then it just going to give me the length is 12. If I wrote that again, let's write an easy one. So it's supposed to give me 4 or 5, given that we are having a null character. So actually it's going to give me 4 because the null character is not counted when we are outputting to the user. Again, when you are dealing with C, there are two things. What is internally happening with the memory and all of these stuff? And this is related to you, which is the programmer. Whatever going to go to the screen is going to go to the user or the client. This is why it's not giving any details related to those things happening internally in the memory. So this is why if the password is 4 letters or characters, it will just, the string length will give you 4 and not 5. It's not counting the null character. Okay? So let's return back here, and this is string compare, another function, okay, in the string .h, the library, and the string compare actually is comparing two strings. Okay, so these two strings can be, let's say, the same, okay, or one string is greater than the other, or one string is less than the other. So in this case, you will find the following. If we are compiling hello with hi, okay, so in this case, hello is greater or having letters greater than hi, okay, the return value from a string compare is going to be negative. If they are the same, it will return 0. If the first one is greater than the last one, it will return positive. So mainly, it's doing the comparison and returning you some useful information. And this is another thing that we are going to touch base again with it when going to branching. Conditionals. Okay? Just to know, like, this function is nice, but again, we will play with that when going to conditionals, because sometimes, let's say the user entered a password, and then after that, let's say we are asking the user to enter the same password, and then we have to compare and see if it is the same or no. If it is the same, okay, you are already my user and will enter my system. If you are not my user and you didn't enter the right password, in this case I have to terminate the program or do any other action. Okay, so we will visit that again when we go to branching and conditions. Okay, so something very important in the memory, inside the memory, if you are having Q only saved there, this means that you are having a character. If you are having Q and then after it a null character, this means this is a string. Even if both of them are only one character saved, right? But this one, as you can see with single notation, this is a character. This one with double quotation, this is a string. And this is saved in memory in this way. This is saved in memory in this way. Okay? These are the functions that's mostly, there are a lot of them, but these are some famous functions. We saw today the string length and string compare. This is another version of string compare, which comparing whatever the uppercase and lowercase. So it's not caring about the uppercase and lowercase. So for example, if we are comparing hi with hi, here they are equal, here they are not equal. This is the only difference, okay? So these are different functions, and there are a lot of functions. If you just Google string.h library in C, you will find a lot of functions defined in this header file. We are going to conclude this video for strings, and our next video actually will be covering functions. Thanks very much for watching this video.